I'm going through it. This is my second week of finding out that I have endometriosis, and I had my laparoscopic surgery 2 weeks ago, and it's been a bit of a roller coaster, I would say. And just mainly wanted to make this video to encourage anyone going through similar health issues or just similar challenges in life. So yeah, it's been crazy to say the least. Going through all the symptoms, trying to figure out what is wrong with me, and then, having to go through see multiple doctors, get a bunch of opinions, go through a bunch of lab tests, like a lab rat, and then, have to vent to you, my husband, about how much pain I'm in, how much fatigue I'm experiencing, how yada, yada, yada. So yeah, it's been quite the roller coaster, but good news is that we finally know what it is, and now it's a matter of trying to adjust lifestyle. But just want to kind of talk about our experiences, what I learned as an individual, and also what we learned together as a couple. I feel like it's one of those things where a marriage or just any relationship is really tested when life be life in, and life throws some hurdles at you, and you really are tested on what foundation you set your relationship on. So that's been on my mind lately.
Yeah, and I think just as your husband and being there and seeing you obviously in discomfort, in pain, naturally, as we kind of saw the symptoms starting to develop, just seeing kind of the quality of life that my wife would enjoy beforehand. So being able to exercise, I think some things we started to realize pretty quickly was you had lower energy.
I was tired all the time.
It would be after the gym and stuff like that too. And I think that's where it first started kind of showing up. But that's to be expected to some degree. It's okay, you had a tough workout. Yeah, we all sometimes feel a little tired after a tough workout. But yeah, then it would be I think random days and stuff you would have fatigue. And so it was kind of these little things that were popping up, and it was just okay, that's not quite normal. And I think a big thing that we talked about was just the quality of life. You kind of need to look at typically what you're able to do, or what you were able to do. And then when that starts to degrade over time, it's that's kind of your realization that you need to seek some help, some research, do something to kind of at least jot down your symptoms and understand kind of how it's progressing. And that was kind of where we started, was just hey, when things aren't how they're supposed to be, that little change could be everything, right? And catching it at that point, and then just tracking the symptoms. You don't have to rush to the doctor and say, or rush to WebMD and try to diagnose yourself or whatever. Or
Gemini.
I guess WebMD is not even really a thing.
No,
people just go to Gemini, ChatGPT, and
Dr.
this is how I'm doing it. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's very easy to kind of go down that path of wanting to know the answer right away. But I think just tracking the symptoms and just kind of being aware that your quality of life is maybe degrading a little bit, and that's how you kind of catch these things before it becomes an issue. But yeah, I'm glad we were able to talk about it, and obviously you felt safe bringing it up. But naturally, for me, being your husband and seeing you in pain or discomfort and stuff like that, that was obviously very tough, and there really wasn't much I could do except for the basics of hey, let's just keep track of things. Hey, go to the doctor. You get a second opinion. If you don't agree with that. I went into Gemini as well, and I gave all the symptoms and
engineer mode.
Yeah, and I got some information, and it did corroborate what you were experiencing and some of the things you heard from doctors. So that was kind of helped put me at ease. But obviously you got to take things with a grain of salt and not over-index on things, but ultimately just be informed. And that was a big thing that you, I think, learned throughout the process.
Absolutely. So that's the number one thing that I learned along this journey of trying to figure out what's wrong with me, is only you know what's wrong with you. Only you know your body best. And you can go to all the doctors in the world, you can go to every specialist, but if you really don't know what that standard is for you in terms of health and wellness, the doctor is not going to be able to help diagnose properly. Like, they could run all the tests in the world, but if you don't have an idea of what's normal, what's not normal, what's okay, like for me, for instance, the being tired all the time, I don't know, given my previous history of being like a bit of a workaholic and like running myself to the ground, I don't have a good relationship with pain and fatigue. So I think I come from like a history of being extremely, like, it takes a lot for me to verbally say, I'm so tired, this is not normal. And I think a lot of people, this day and age especially, are operating like that as well. Like, it's so easy. And I can't speak for all women, but a lot of women experience this. Like, we set a high threshold for how much we can handle before we like speak up and like, ooh, you know what? This isn't normal. And I think that's, a lot of people can relate to that. And I mean, at least for me, that is something that I realized, that if you don't know your own symptoms well, like, you would be asking, him being an engineer, he would be asking me the most basic questions, like, oh, when did you start experiencing that? Did you notice that before you got off birth control or after? How long after? He was being a Mr. Investigator over here.
Yeah, I mean, that's like what a doctor's going to do,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, because,
Essentially.
going back to your point around, only you know what's going on in your body. Like, a doctor can't feel what you're feeling.
Exactly.
Right? So you have to be able to communicate what you're feeling to the doctor. And then they need to understand, like, when are those symptoms amplified, right? So maybe when you wake up in the morning, you feel fine. But then as you go throughout the day, maybe you're standing more, you're sitting more, or if you, do any kind of twisting motions, or if you bend over, that's amplifying those symptoms. That's helpful information for them, because it helps them kind of pinpoint what potentially is going on. Because, ultimately that's all they really have. I mean, they can do imagery and stuff like that, but even before they get to doing that, they want to say like, hey, do you notice that you feel certain things when you do like lifestyle changes? Like, hey, when I eat more fried food, I notice this. Or like, when you can get to that level of granularity and understanding, it's really impressive.
And it's
for
very
most
helpful.
doctors. Most doctors are gonna be like, wow, this person actually understands their body and understands how certain things can impact it. And I think especially with a lot of issues kind of being driven by inflammatory type of behaviors, whether it be like, for example, fried food or the things of food you eat, or
processed foods,
processed foods. And there's a lot of stuff on that. Those things can really exacerbate symptoms or make your body just be in more like dis-ease, right? So
and it's interesting because there's like actual data, like your blood work, your like if you get an MRI done, or like for women, if you get like an ultrasound done or a pelvic exam, if you have those like tests done, they can look for certain things, and that's like objective data, right? That's something that you don't even have to report. They can find out on their own by doing these tests. And then there's also like subjective data, and that's pretty much what you report to the doctor. And I think that's the piece that I learned so much about myself. I realize, as much as I am on top of like a lot of things in life, I don't know how to communicate certain things, because I think, for one, like I said, I don't think I had a good standard of what is normal and what's not normal. And I think that I've just, throughout this whole journey, I think one of the biggest things I learned is in order for you to advocate for yourself, you need to understand your symptoms, and you need to be like hyper aware of like even the smallest things. And I think because I do have a family member who got sick very early onset. My mom, she got dementia very early, and it caused havoc in our family, and that was really hard on me. I wrestle with that because on one end, like, it is scary to know something's wrong with you and then be crippled up in fear of like a diagnosis or what it could be, right? But then there's the other extreme side of the spectrum where you're like Googling, you're chat GPTing, you're going on Gemini every single morning, which I did. Like all your symptoms, could it be this? Could it be that? Could it be this? And you know, it too much of anything is not good. And
Yeah.
at some point, I went a little crazy. Like I upload all my labs on there. OpenAI probably knows more about my health history than my own doctor does. But I went to the extreme and I think I went a little crazy because I started mistrusting doctors. And that's another thing that I was going to talk about my next point, which is the healthcare system can be a bit broken. Controversial take. Would love to get
I don't
perspective
think that's
from.
very controversial. Like,
But I mean, I feel
I think
bad for
everyone,
saying that
yeah.
because all the hardworking healthcare professionals,
I mean, they're the ones who probably know it more than anyone.
I also worked in healthcare,
Yeah.
as one discipline of healthcare, but I just feel like if you're relatively healthy and you take good, decent care, you go to the gym, you're mindful of what you eat and stuff, and you stay on top of going to the doctor at least once a year, get your checkup in. I feel like if you bring a bunch of your symptoms, it's easy to be dismissed. And I know I'm not the only one there, especially with women's health. Turns out a lot of women go years undiagnosed and dismissed from doctor to doctor when it comes to getting diagnosed for endometriosis or any other issues. But it was another thing that I realized. Not only is it important to know yourself and know your body and set that standard and kind of document what's normal and what's not normal, but it's also like you have to use that data and like really advocate for yourself. And when I say advocate for yourself, like don't be afraid of being that Karen patient. Like don't be afraid to challenge authority figures who are telling you like you're fine. Like, of course, because I have a healthy BMI, healthy weight. Because they ask you, oh, how many are you active? Do you smoke? When was the last period? They ask you the same questions over and over, and I understand why, but it's just if they look at all those, objective pieces of data and they look at you and you look relatively healthy, your age group as well, and you have like symptoms like, oh, maybe some fatigue and, a little bit of pelvic cramp. It could be this, could be that. I do think it's easier to be dismissed until your symptoms become catastrophic. So, for example, for endometriosis, turns out a lot of women actually go on years being undiagnosed and then come to find out they're in so much pain that they have to go to the ER or urgent care, or they find out that they have stage 4. And by that point, like you have adhesions on your intestines, you have adhesions on like your bowels, your bladder, and you're in a wheelchair, like a friend of a friend we know. So it's, I'm not saying all doctors are like that, but just like big primary healthcare systems, at least for us in Charlotte, that has been an experience that I've had, even back in California. But it's like things are not an issue enough to warrant like surgical intervention or for you to have some kind of treatment plan unless your cholesterol is like way up the roof, like extremely high, even if, like, for example, for me, even if my cholesterol went up and I gained weight and I had all these issues, it wasn't an issue for the doctors. And they would always tell me like, you're fine, like it's very normal. Like, and I'm sure to a certain extent it is, but for me personally, I know that I've never had issues with my blood work at all. And the fact that it doubled with a certain period of time, like those patterns are so important for you to be aware of. And I think that's what I mean in terms of being your biggest advocate, because your doctor's not going to know the entire context. And ChatGPT or Gemini, any of the LLMs, they're not going to know the full context of everything until you feed it.
Yeah, I would say like, it's important to have a relationship or, try to cultivate a relationship with your doctors because like it should be a two-way street. It should be a conversation, ideally, where you can come in and if you're someone who's intentional about, being prepared, understanding your symptoms, and wanting to share and learn about the process, because that's also part of it, right?
Yeah.
So, like if you have some blood work and there is a number that's maybe outside of a range, it could be harmless, really. Like, honestly, it might not be anything, because a lot of times one metric being out of range, but another one that like complements that being within range would kind of offset that. So it's like, okay, yeah, maybe you have high LDL, but your cholesterol's low, right? So that tells us like it's not an issue. And I'm not even sure if that's true. That's like just something I've, just giving as an example. So there is context in that sense, where just because you see something doesn't mean that you have to like go all out and go crazy about it. However, it's good to have a doctor that will hear you out and understands that you are trying to take your health seriously, and you're not trying to like undermine them, right? Because I think that is also humility on the doctor's
They get very
side.
defensive. Some
Yeah.
doctors, not all, but some doctors get very
And also
defensive
your
and question.
tone too, like how you speak to somebody, right? Like you shouldn't be coming from an inquisitive spot where like, hey, you want to be able to make better decisions for yourself and for your life, any lifestyle changes you might need to make.
Yeah.
And so you're asking questions to, hey, what can I be doing better? How can I
You're trying to
improve? Blah, blah.
learn.
Yeah.
Like,
So, and you should, ideally, we should have healthcare professionals who are willing to kind of meet us where we are and have those discussions.
Yeah.
I had a recent experience. So I'm not a huge, I wouldn't say not a huge doctor fan, but like, I just feel like it's hard to find a doctor where you feel like you can really connect and they hear you and they're willing to take the time. And, it doesn't mean that someone can't be, good at what they do and be very brief and like, efficient. But yeah, I had a recent example. I went to a dermatologist here in North Carolina, and she was like renowned, like being really good.
I did my research.
You did your research. She said she was great, and overall, like based on what she prescribed to me, was great. I'm seeing the results, and I'm happy with it. But I will say, like, I got in there, and it was like business, right? Like she was like legit, probably 2-3 minutes. I mean, I think she like maybe like I guess the nurse or technician comes in, asks you questions. Maybe she reviews them before she came in, and like so she's like kind of looking like, okay, this and this, like rattling off what she thinks I need. And then I tried to like share a little bit more about my routine, like, oh yeah, I work out, like my skin tends to be a little bit more oily, etc., etc. And then she like was like, oh okay, yeah, and add like another product and stuff. But essentially, it's almost as if she had her playbook of like what to go to, and hey, maybe that's fine, right? Like she's probably seen a lot of different cases, and there's probably some really serious ones where she's like,
This
she
case
has
was
to,
like too boring.
yeah, and like maybe that's just what it is. So, and like obviously, I don't know it from her perspective because like I'm seeing it from my perspective, and I'm like, this is important to me. But like you might see from the doctor's perspective, and it almost feels like they're kind of like, all right, on to the next.
Well, it's from the healthcare, also insurance perspective, low profit appointment. There's certain procedures that are like consultations or like little procedures that are like you want to reduce the amount of time. I just didn't know she was only going to spend less than 10 minutes because mind you, we waited for the appointment for like, what, 6 months?
Yeah, it was a long time.
Longer than 6 months.
And I think that's what it is. I think the reason, and I get it, right? It's a business.
Yeah,
because
it is.
she probably has a set amount of people that you can, see in a day. And so if she's spending 20, 30 minutes with every patient, that significantly reduces the amount of people she can see.
Yeah.
So she's trying to get in there, be quick with it, and get on to the next one. So, hey, I mean, I get it from a business perspective, right? Like she's got to make her money. She's got to do what she needs to do. But yeah, I just remember her like sharing with me a bunch of stuff. And then she's like, I have any questions? And like, my brain didn't even process half of what she said yet. And I'm like, no, I guess I guess I'm good. At that point, I'm like, if I have any questions around what she prescribed, I'm like, I'm just going to ask Gemini about it or whatever, right? Like,
and
I mean,
there's so many, and this is like, I spent weeks researching this dermatologist, by the way. And I'm sure she's amazing. She's fantastic. We don't question her expertise, but I'm a bit more critical on care because I worked in private practice, and obviously that's the difference, work versus working at like a big healthcare system.
Yeah.
But I'm very critical of like, especially that new patient or first time client consultation. I think that like is one of the most, if not the most important visits. And everything else, like it can fall into place once you have the patient's trust and everything. But that first meeting is just so, and it also, it takes a lot for you to make that appointment, whether it's a dermatologist, whether it's a gynecologist or internal medicine doctor, whatever it is, whoever it is, it takes a lot for you to set time aside in your schedule and have courage, because like, who wants to go to the doctor, right? You go to the doctor to not hear good news. You know, you end up finding out there's like terrible things, like 100 things wrong with you. But I think it takes so much courage for people to set aside time in their day, and also the finances, right? It's not cheap, like healthcare ain't cheap. And even if you do have insurance, you still have to pay your deductible and out-of-pocket max. So it's not like it's costing us something. And you're taking the time to say, you know what, I'm going to do my research and then set aside time. And, you know, I think the standard is just so low now. I don't know if like expectations are, I've learned to lower them with care, because I just know like things are going to be, and that's also how I felt with my experience. And that was not just dermatology. It was women's health. Which is very serious, at least to me. I don't know about other people, but it's serious to me, especially because we're trying to, we want kids and we are trying to plan for a family. And so that's a priority for us. But all that to say, like, it's not that, you know, I mean, the doctor that I found for you, there's so many people on Reddit that was raving about her and like yada, yada, yada. And that's my next point. It's like, don't always trust the reviews and don't always trust other people's anecdotal experiences. Although they can be helpful, that won't necessarily translate to you having a good experience. I'd say like finding a good doctor, especially when you're going through health issues, it's a bit of a hit or miss. It's one of those things where you just kind of have to like take a leap of faith and just give it a try. And it might, and I know it's going to cost you, but at least if they're not helpful and they're dismissive, or you just didn't have good.
I mean, I think the most annoying thing about going to a new doctor is the paperwork. It's like that alone. It's not even the money sometimes, because the co-pays or whatever, as long as you have insurance, like, you know, it shouldn't be too bad.
Yeah.
But it's like all the forms you have to fill out, the questionnaire and this and that and blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't know.
You have to go here multiple times.
Yeah. And then like, then you get asked the same questions over and over again.
By the nurse.
That to me is like.
And the medical assistant.
Yeah. But
the doctor asked them again the third time.
Yeah.
I get it.
But I agree. I think you're absolutely right. Like you need to find, medical professionals that you can at least feel comfortable with. Like, it is a bit of a relationship that you're forming, and
it is.
It's okay to try out a few to find what you're looking for, especially if someone seems like dismissive or they're not thorough enough. Like, I think even a concept now that's available to us that wasn't before is you have like telemedicine, which is available. So your doctor doesn't even have to be in your area, right? Like, if you need to like do something like a physical type of test, they can always refer you out. But sometimes like you might come across a doctor on like social media, or maybe you'll hear of someone who's really renowned for a particular area, and you just want to sit down and talk to them, share your symptoms, have a conversation. And sometimes that might be a little bit of an easier spot to kind of meet someone.
Also, shout out to all the telemedicine doctors out there. Thank you. Thank you so much. Because I found one for me. And it's not to say that like, if you're a doctor and you work in the healthcare system, like you're not great. It's not that. I'm not saying that. But that one telemedicine doctor, all she does is telehealth visits. She doesn't have her own practice. She doesn't have like that overhead. Yeah.
I'm good on the office. There's some remote work.
No, but it's such a blessing. Like, I think every doctor has a bit of a specialty, right? And she has the luxury of time, being at home, working from home, working remotely. And she had the time to sit with my results and like my labs and like sit. She could make the time for to hear like all my symptoms from many years ago, So honestly, I appreciate, the variety of disciplines, variety of services. Highly recommend, especially when it comes to like second opinions, and it's good to like have different consultations, different perspectives, because the doctors that I saw in person, in the hospital setting or in the facility setting, they might be better at like with the labs and physical exams, like, so kudos to that. But when it comes to kind of having another perspective, especially if you're kind of deciding like, okay, do I go through with this procedure or do I go through with this testing? Like it is, I mean, they say it's like non-invasive, but it might be a big procedure for you. Highly recommend, just exploring telehealth doctors, because they are going to have a little bit more capacity, because the way they practice medicine is very different. They are going to have more time. They are going to be more, because that's all they have to go by, like results, data. Like they can't see you physically. They can issue lab orders, but all they have is to sit with like your numbers, and also your reported symptoms. So that honestly was, I actually got a second opinion for laparoscopy. I had an amazing OBGYN, but it was a big procedure for me. And I got, not really a second opinion, it was like a, fifth opinion? But honestly, I did that like 2 weeks before the actual scheduled procedure, and I'm so glad I did. I was actually very emotional. I prayed about it. And turns out I was going through like many different symptoms that were kind of overlapping with each other. I had like metabolic issues, and then I also had like fertility / like pelvic issues, inflammation issues. So it was extremely eye-opening. And I'd say, when in the journey of advocating for yourself, I think it's so important you aren't afraid of getting different opinions. There's no right or wrong. It's good to have different perspectives, and then it helps you form your own perspective, because now you don't have like as many blind spots. And she also was able to confirm, like she told me straight up, like, I highly recommend it. I don't think it's PCOS. From what you're sharing and from what I see in your lab results, and I didn't even have to ask her to look at my lab results. Like she came ready. Like such a different kind of care that we have access to nowadays. But it was life changing, because that's all I needed to hear from her to say highly recommend. It's balls in your court. But highly recommend you go through with it, because it looks like, based on what you're sharing and what I see, even if it's not, it's gonna be one step in the right direction. And it's honestly one of the best health decisions I've ever made. Post-op, 2 weeks post-surgery, I'm still going through it, but the peace of mind that you have, and just like knowing that like you weren't crazy, and like being tired, like you are able to understand what your standard is now, because you now know that wasn't normal. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with. My next point, in terms of like what I also learned, I guess like what we learned as a couple, in the context of marriage and healthy relationship dynamics, is I learned how important it is, like in the process, to over communicate, especially when you're going through something very serious and there's a lot of uncertainties. I think it's easy, and this is coming from my own personal history of having parents like struggle with communication, and my mom getting sick way too fast, way too soon. I know she was scared. I know like she must have known that she was like something was wrong with her, but I think she was always scared to share it with us, her kids, and my dad. So that is a big fear of mine, and so now I'm like the opposite. I'm like hyper, like, babe, like I'm not feeling good. Or like, babe, I feel a little tired. Like, and I think I struggled with it in the beginning of our relationship or of our marriage. Is I felt like I was burdening him, and I felt like I didn't want to worry him. And I think that's a big thing. Like when something's wrong with you, and like something's wrong with you deep down, you kind of like, you don't you're scared, but I think the fear of burdening your family, your loved ones, and worrying them and stressing them and them getting scared, I think that can sometimes be very paralyzing. And I know that was a big thing where I couldn't even think straight for myself. Like I couldn't vocalize what I was feeling because I was scared. And I was also like scared of like worrying you on top of like everything that he's holding down for the house, you know, on top of his work schedule. So, but over time, like you actually helped me realize how important it is to like not do things alone. And I know that sounds really cliched, but it is so important for you to be okay with asking for help, asking for support. And I know that's not something that's celebrated in culture. Everyone's like, you're supposed to do it on your own. And, you know, we got the whole self-help culture saying like, you should be able to figure it out. But for me, like, I learned humility, I learned surrender, I learned this idea of just inviting you in. Even when I know that there was nothing that he could do, just like being able to communicate what's hard for me was so helpful. And I think it wasn't even about getting you to do something to help me as I went through the symptoms. It was more so like letting you in and being part of the health journey, like inviting you in, making sure that I'm not just, you know, I got this, like I'll figure it out on myself. Like, because in marriage, just in relationships, the number one thing that I personally believe causes distancing and like a crack in the relationship is when you do things in isolation, especially like as part of our Christian faith. When you try to do something in like by yourself or in secret, and like when you're trying to do it alone, I think it's very hard, especially like health issues. And I get it, like the fear, right? But for me, like I just realized just how much more I could handle when I invited my husband into knowing like what I'm going through, what I'm feeling, like day in and day out, not just like a summary, like a week summary, like, hey, this past week I felt blah, 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 but like real time, like when it matters in the moment. So that's a huge thing that I learned.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and obviously it's going to look different for everyone. I think it's very easy for people to want to compare their relationship or their communication style with others, and you know, act like one way is better than another. I think communication it's undeniable how important it is in a relationship because people aren't going to be able to read your mind, and so you know you just have to kind of be able to understand that you're both on the same team, right? And I think for us, as we were kind of going through the process, and one of the things that we were trying to conceive, like having a child, and so like that's the path, the journey we're on together. We understand that in order to do that, it takes two to tango, right? And so because we're both on the same team in that regard, I think it does make it easier. And we've had open conversations around the fact that, hey, it's like, it's our plan, our desire to have a child, like, you know, biological child. But we also leave it up to God to say, how can he use our marriage, our relationship to give him glory? So, you know, obviously we are going down the path of trying to do things the natural way and like how, you know, we anticipate it to kind of go. And in order to do that, it's like we need to address any things that come up and challenges and lifestyle changes that we need to be able to make to accommodate that. And so like, you know, going down that path and us just kind of explaining things from our side, like how we're both navigating that space. And, you know, this kind of came up as a result of like going down that space and like you're talking to your OBGYN and getting some insights, getting some feedback and stuff like that. And it's like, I would never want you to feel like alone or like that you have to kind of do that like by yourself. Like obviously being able to have an OBGYN that you feel good about and you talk to, and, you know, she's able to make you feel seen and supported. That's something that I can't do because I don't have those tools in my toolkit to help you in that regard. But I guess your husband, like someone who can hear you out and also notice when things aren't right and when you need to like, hey, keep pushing in, keep asking the questions, educate yourself on certain things. And like, I think the last piece that I'll mention was for me, you know, having children is important, but I would say first and foremost is your overall health. Because to me, this doesn't make sense to be pressing the issue of like, oh, we gotta have kids and this and that, and like, oh, we're behind schedule, like, you know,
Oof,
we this
I'm
and
getting
that.
emotional
Like,
at this. Yeah.
you know, like I think like
Yeah.
that's that doesn't help the situation at all.
Yeah.
So like for me, it was first and foremost it's your health and making sure that you're good because you know if we're to have children, then we both need to be there and supportive. And I know the amazing woman that you are and the amazing mother that you're going to be.
Yeah.
And like I want you to play an
Oh my
active role in
God.
that.
Stop cutting onions.
So yeah, you know, and I want that to be a thing. Yeah, you got the tissue.
I'm good. Continue.
Yeah, but like you know, like I feel like that's the most important thing to me. Like I would not want you to be your body to not be functioning how you would expect it to, and then you get pregnant and you have to like have another human being growing inside of you,
pushing
like,
on like
you can't imagine like how much of a like the stress it puts on the body. And if your body's already under stress because it's signaling that through symptoms, it's like how much worse is it going to be with kids? Like I don't think you're just gonna like, oh, we got pregnant, like it's an answer to prayer. It's like maybe, but at the same time, like, and we would trust God in the situation.
Sure.
But like I feel like it would be negligent on my point to be like, oh babe, don't worry about that. Like we just gotta stay the course and this and that. Like, no, like if your body is telling you something's not right, you're not feeling good, like let's address that. Children will have their time, that will come. First and foremost, you have to be healthy because the worst thing is like getting pregnant and then just being essentially miserable, right? And then potentially even being resentful because like you feel like this thing kind of ravaged your body
and took
and
so
like,
much out of you.
So that was a big thing for me.
Last thing I'll add is sorry. Definitely like ladies, it is so important to like, and then this is, I always knew like what type of man you were, but when I first met you, but it is so important to choose somebody who isn't so fixated on like the outcomes. And you know, there are people who are like dead set on like, I have to have my own kids, like, or I have to have like, I have to be married, or like I have to have this or the house. And like I know it's really easy to put a lot of weight on those things, but I can't tell you enough just how life-changing it is to be with somebody, to pick a partner, and also like pray for a partner, whatever your faith walk looks like. Just finding a partner who isn't so fixated on like the outcomes. And I know like, especially as women, like when it's that time for you to like, like get there and be able to produce children, I think it's one of the most amazing gifts that women have. But life will life, and sometimes we're not always given that ability to do so naturally or in the timing that we expect. But I think that's something that I have learned so much in our relationship. We've been married for about almost 2 years, almost 2 year anniversary. We've been together for about like 4.5 years right now. But we're learning things like every day, every week, every month. And if there's anything that this journey has taught me is just how grateful I am to have prayed and found a partner that just like really understands where you're coming from and is like supportive and understanding. And how lucky are we to be in a generation where medicine's only getting better, technology's getting better, people are getting smarter, there's new discoveries, new modes of treatment and medicines getting better. So how lucky are we that we are going to have options for having a family? And I wholeheartedly believe that there's always a way to have a family, but this is pretty much what you have to define for the foundation of your relationship. Is it based on the outcomes? Do you have to get married? Do you have to have the kids? Do you have to have the house and the car and the white picket fence? Or are you and your partner going to withstand the trials of life and have little hurdles down the road and be able to navigate together with grace? And it's hard because I know these things can make or break a couple. But like something that we're learning is just how much we're tested on that foundation and how important it is to come back to one another and like just remove yourself from like having to produce that outcome and remember why you fell in love with your partner. Remember why you chose and prayed for this partner. And you realize just how strong that foundation is. And for us, that foundation is obviously our faith, God. And we wholeheartedly believe that, you know, God is going to give us a way to have a family. Right now, with the health stuff, that is the priority. It's getting my body right, getting my health right, and making sure I'm okay and in a better position to be able to take care of somebody, to take care of kids. And that I believe God is working miracles in our relationship and building our foundation even stronger and making it even stronger through this trial of life. So definitely encourage you to think about the foundation for a relationship, because it's easy to have like, what do they say? The vibes, or like when you're dating singles, when you're looking for somebody and you date, and you could tell you have chemistry with that person, and you can say like, we just connect and yada 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 yada. But I think it's so important to understand like your values, what's important to you, and then to be with somebody that shares those values and understands life from your perspective. That's another video we'll have to save. I think dating is always a fun topic, but that's something that I'll leave.
Yeah, I'll just add, I mean, you can't give what you don't have. Yeah. So if you don't understand the importance of things like taking care of your health or your spiritual health, your mental health, right? Like financial health, whatever that may be, right? If you don't have those things, you don't set a standard for these things, it's going to be very hard in the context of relationship to be able to communicate that to somebody and like drive good discussions around it, right? Because if you've done the work on yourself, if you've understood certain things that you've had to work through, you can obviously come from a more empathetic perspective. You can ask better questions and be less judgmental around stuff. I feel like that's something I'm always trying to work on. I feel like I can be very hard on myself, and you have to make space for yourself, learn to make space for your partner, and just even the people in your life. Like God has placed people in your life for a reason, and just trying to have patience, trying to have some capacity and stuff like that to be there and supportive is extremely important. So I think that's one thing for sure. I'd like to leave you all with on that.